Our next chat on the topic, Cutting the Clutter in the Digital Era, a must-have practical guide on taking back control of our own lives from the internet. A balance out of this is vital, but in times of constant tech involvement, how can we find solace within the self, minus that handset that we all have, is what this conversation is going to lead to. Allow me to introduce our speakers, Nandan Nilekani, co-founder and chairman, Infosys Technologies Limited, and Tanuj Bhojwani, fellow iSPIRT Foundation. Nandan is the co-founder and chairman of Infosys Technology Limited. He was also the founding chairman of the Unique Identification Authority of India, UIDAI, in the rank of a cabinet minister from 2009 to 2014. Most recently, Nandan has co-founded and is the chairman of XXXVIII, a not-for-profit effort to create a learning center, technology-based platform to improve basic literacy and numeracy for millions of children. Tanuj Bhojwani, as a fellow at iSPIRT Foundation, works on policy issues related to digital identity, payments, data protection, and drones. Prior to iSPIRT, Tanuj has been a VC and an entrepreneur. The session chair is Supria, Dhanda, business leader and entrepreneur, and she is a business leader with more than 2 decades of corporate experience in leading technology companies like Western Digital, SanDisk, Actilucent. So we're really thrilled to have Supria, who's anchored mergers and acquisitions and has been an entrepreneur as well. So over to you, Supria, and the panelists.
Thank you, Shreya. Very happy and excited to be here at the NTLF NASSCOM's flagship conference 2022. And very excited to be here on this fireside chat with none other than Nandan Nilekani and Tanuj Bhojwani. We will get to the discussion, absolutely the fireside discussion, in just a moment. So what are we talking about today? We are talking about what has technology done to our lives. Well, prima facie, we think it's done wonders. It is a great boon. If you look at the advent of internet, the greatest invention that we talk of the humankind, I'm not going to say mankind, the humankind that has experienced and the kind of advantages it's brought, it has made global communities come together. It has brought advancement, growth to the world of business, to the world of finances. Entrepreneurial ventures are blooming. And of course, our personal lives are a lot more richer, is what we believe it has done to our lives. However, and when we look at our lives today, trust me, when I look at my life and everyone's around, I'm looking at waking up sleepy eyes in the morning to checking an email. My phone is my device and my world begins with that. I also look at my phone, WhatsApp, sometimes even my husband good night on that and go off to sleep. In between, the entire life has moved online, and obviously no thanks to pandemic. From buying everything online, experiencing new things online, to connecting with my friends online, to definitely conducting and going about the world of business online. Everything today is your little handheld device and whatever your brand may be, but that's your view to the online world. Well, so far so good, my friends. But however, I sometimes feel, and that's what I've been told by my colleagues, friends, the world of news, that our relationship is getting a little toxic. When we sit down for dinners, we look at restaurants around, we see everybody's busy with their eyes completely glued. Well, it is putting relationship at risk. It's definitely bringing in issues of mental well-being. It's almost like we need to set up a society of digital, wherein we need to do digital detox. Well, that's become a fashionable thing. There's also digital divide, where there is a part of the world that knows the language and there is a part that does not know the language. Amongst the many divides we live in our society, well, this is just one such evil. And you talk the complexities with all these big majors, very keen on what's happening with our lives. They want to know what Nandan is drinking, what is he liking, what's the brand he offers, and what does he like, and so does Tanuj. And they want to inundate our life with those choices, as if we weren't confused already. And now there are these plethora of choices to choose from. Well, that's what we call being at risk. Our agency at times seems to be completely lost and held incarcerated. And therefore, we are not exercising our free will as much as we'd like to. To add to this, the mounting pressure of social media, how many followers you have, who's chasing you, all of that. But you know what? Not to worry. We have the masters with us who have absolutely mastered this technology. And importantly, they've come up with a system that works in their recently co-authored book, which I have loved reading every word of it, and I'm sure you would enjoy it. Get your hands at that, Art of Bitfulness. Love the name and love the content. Co-authored by Nandan, Nilekani and Tanuj Bhojwani. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get the magic started.
Thank you, Supria.
Nandan, my first question is to you. You, in your book, called it beautifully third crisis in making. From the time of Alexander Graham Bell, when there was a phone used only for telephony, to now where this complete, technology kind of getting condensed in one device, you have said we have to look at this problem and look at it from individual to the collective, the entire spectrum. So Nandan, talk to us. What is this third crisis? Why do you choose to call it so? And what's really causing this clutter in the digital age?
Well, we call it the third crisis because we can think of the pandemic and dealing with the pandemic as, say, the first crisis, and climate change is the second crisis. But the way we interact with our digital devices, the hygiene that we practice is very important. As you rightly said, in the pandemic, our entire lives have gone digital. And it's clear that we cannot walk away from technology. In fact, I'm a big fan of technology. We have to find ways of doing it better, which means that we need to have systems, whether we're using a phone or a PC or whatever, to do things better and keep on top of things and be calm. And that's what we mean as the individual solution to the situation. At the same time, the macro situation requires also designing systems and architectures in a way that there is more competition, there's more interoperability, there's more choice. And that is the collective. So our book addresses both the individual choice, individual solution or individual approach to this digital overwhelming situation, as well as a collective solution.
Awesome. And Nandan, if I ask that, would you choose one over the other to say where the solution lies more between the individual or at the collective? Would you say, is there any one end that needs to do more?
Well, I think, the individual is that what is it that we can do within our own agency? What is it that we can do within our own power? The collective is far more complex because it involves societal changes and we don't necessarily have any influence over it, or it takes a long time. So I think we should fix or address our individual use of the systems to use technology in a more effective way and be calm, and also work with others to see if the larger thing can be addressed.
Awesome. Awesome. Tanuj, bringing you into the conversation. Thank you so much, Nandan, to say you are not choosing or taking any sides. You're saying, let's make sure that we work at both the ends. Tanuj, talking to you now, there is a huge institutional role at play of the big majors, right? We are saying that there is a lot of design that they're doing, and that's different. But you also give the users a little bit of a free out of jail card to say that, think before you think you are to blame. There's an entire environment at play, and that's where you call in the system. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Right. So I think, when we talk about our phones these days, in the way that we talk about stuff like cigarettes or alcohol, we say we're addicted, right? We say we're overusing our phone. I can't seem to look away. I can't help but go back for one more scroll. So the language, the way we approach it, again, is addiction. And there's a story in the book we talk about these experiments that took place, back in the day in, I think, 60s, 70s, this experiment called the Rat Park, right? Around the time, the big crisis in the US was that the soldiers who were going out for different wars, when they were coming back, there they had access to, various sort of drugs, which they were really addicted to, including stuff like heroin, etc. And those drugs were considered so powerful and so addictive that everybody thought, this is it, their lives are done. When they come back, they're going to bring back that kind of that habit, that addiction, all the consequences that come with that, the violence, etc., into the country. But there are very surprising numbers. I believe that less than 12% of them relapsed into drug use in 3 years, and less than 5% in a year, which is phenomenal, which any other drug treatment for local drug addicts would never work at that level. So there's one data point was that, and then the second data point where, all these drugs, they were considered addictive, and their power was addictive because they used to experiment on rats, giving them one bottle of either cocaine or some other water and regular water or food, and the rats would consistently press the liver that gave them the drugs, right? And that's where they came up with the idea that these substances are very addictive, to the point where the rats would even die because they would not choose food. But Rat Park changed the environment of the rats. What they did was that instead of these isolated rats who are very social creatures, live in colonies, instead of those individual creatures, they put them in this large cage, 200 times the cage area of a regular what individual rat would get. There were entire societies, there were play areas, there were mates. There was essentially people could live healthier lives. Sorry, not people, but the rats could live healthier lives. And there was still a container with drugs and there was a container with regular food. And in this environment, the rats would consistently choose the food and water. So what both of these data points tell us is that it's not just the substance or the user. It's not that either the person is weak or the substance is too addictive. There's also the role of context, right? And the same with your digital environment. If you want to sit down and focus and write, let's say, preparing for this session, you sent us a wonderful note, Supria. When you had to do that, if all the time your email is pinging, your chat is pinging, something is coming at you, Slack is here, and whatever is happening, how likely it is, do you think, that you'll sit down and actually finish that document, right? So if you could change your digital environment, right, in that way, you could see in sort of outstanding effect on your own productivity, on your focus, etc. All the things we say we lack in terms of our willpower, etc. Our system, what's in the book, basically says, hey, let's start being more aware of what our environment is doing to us, and let's start making systematic fixes in that environment, such that it's easier for you to do what you're supposed to be doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Tanuj. I'm such a dog lover, but sometimes I pity the rats that have to go through so many things so that humans can live a better life. But thank you so much for that. And I think you're right. For everyone watching us today, continue to look what your environment is doing to you. And I think that's what we are saying. That is going to be so important. And then figure your role in that. We aren't superheroes or superheroines, I think that's where it is. And Nandan, coming to you, Tanuj, thanks for that. Nandan, coming to you now, when we talk about there is this world of business, which, you're calling it, and everybody knows that it's all about blitzscaling. It's like become big. There is a size and scale. That is the only gateway to success. Do or die. And you're also calling it now, saying that that's the problem. Those are the slippery slopes of scale. And of course, call it the world, the way they're aggregators coming together, and that kind of model tops your list. What, according to you, is now the future that it must look like? And therefore, that's the kind of digital infrastructure we should move to. What would you recommend? And more importantly, knowing you, what kind of values do you think it needs to protect?
Well, I think it's important to create a digital infrastructure which provides interoperability and portability. In every sector, if you don't like the use of a particular thing, you can go to some other product. For example, if you are using a mobile phone and you want to move to another mobile service provider, you can do mobile number portability very easily. And this actually is there in many sectors. When you book a plane ticket, you can combine a ticket across multiple airlines in a single PNR. So interoperability and portability is there in every industry. And I think if we are able to make our technology solutions much more interoperable and portable, then that will allow one, competition, because new people can enter and provide better solutions. Choice, because I can move from one provider to another. And therefore, innovation will decide who is the winner in this. And that's what I think we need to do. And many of the things we have done, and the second part of the book in the collective addresses that, is many of the things we have done in India through the India digital stack and so on, actually address this. And we position that as a possible alternative way of thinking about population scale digital infrastructure.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Nandan. If there is any one thing, and of course, you're the man behind us all getting digitized and having our unique identity imprinted. And there's so much of, fondness that entire, India has. And of course, it's called the Project Worldwide, the, largest in social scale. If there is one or two things that now you think India is at the cusp of and ready, considering this pandemic has brought, instant digitalization, what would that be? What would India can look at in terms of the digital stack going forward?
I think, first of all, what we already have itself is quite a lot. I mean, we have Aadhaar with 1.3 billion people doing 50 million transactions a day, 5 million eKYCs a day. That's transformed a whole lot of things. And then, of course, UPI, which is a very modern payment system that has multiple banks, multiple front ends. So you can all interoperate. You can change your device. You can change your bank account. You can change your app and continue to work. And that does for 4.5 billion transactions last month, thanks to NPCI's development of UPI. Now, there are a couple of big things that are on the anvil. One is the account aggregator framework, which has been launched by the Reserve Bank of India. And this essentially puts power of data in the hands of the users. Now, this is a very unique concept because all over the world, data is either in the hands of companies or the hands of government. But if each individual user, each individual business is able to have access to its own data, then you can do some dramatic things with it. An account aggregator is being rolled out in the financial sector, for example, for lending. Now, small businesses can leverage the digital footprint of their invoices, their sales, their tax payments, offer that to a lender, and the lender can give them a decision to lend on the basis of this data. So that is a big thing, and account aggregator is going to be a big thing in the coming years. The other big thing which is happening is the Open Network for Digital Commerce, or ONDC, and that is to make e-commerce an open interoperable platform where any supplier can become a supplier in a networked environment. Any retailer can provide e-commerce services. Any delivery and logistics company can deliver for you. And this is going to be very important, again, to create a much more inclusive, open e-commerce platform. So both these are examples of some of the population scale infrastructure which is being built in India, which is going to be transformational in nature, just like Aadhaar and UPI were.
Awesome. We have the solutions ready. Nandan, thank you so much. So getting our agency back, getting a lot of, what the internet started with, as a shared resource funded by government, you're saying it's going to be hopefully a lot more civilized world. And lovely. Tanuj, continuing the conversation on that, the Web 3.2, the decentralization of it all, from, being used for social good to now being monopoly of a few. You're also, your entire life, professional life is also dedicated to creating that ecosystem. So talk to us about some of those changes that are coming in and how you think that's going to pan out in the future. Whereas we call it the clutter today, but it's probably a lot more positive way that is, being architected going forward.
Yeah, I think, even when I started with the internet, I was sort of 99, 2000, that kind of era when I was using computers and my parents had given me access to the internet. And the internet was a wonderful place to open most things by default. If you were putting them on the internet, the culture was such that if you were to put it on the internet, by default, you're saying here it is for everybody, right? There was no sense, there was nothing to pay for, there was no whatever, advertising existed, but it was still like not intrusive, it was not targeted and in the way that it is right now, etc. There were no platforms built specifically or designed specifically to use cutting edge psychology and science and research to like capture your attention, right? So somewhere as a science project for sharing knowledge, for like creating this wonderful thing as a global resource in the peak of the time, where Nandan will probably speak about this better, about globalization was, the talk of the town back then and things were spreading. So it felt like this first global thing that we all created for all of us, right? And there was a sense of wonder and possibility. And now there's a sense of dread, right? Like if you share something on social media, you will find out all the possible ways that you did not think of in which you could be disagreed with, right? You just have to say one sentence and all possible dimensions of disagreement will be revealed to you, right? That's the best way to find out.
Very true.
So, and this hostile space comes because there are people designing for engagement, right? And engagement sometimes there's 2-3 ways of doing it. One is you show very sort of provocative or content, or you show stuff that will get a reaction, right? Which sometimes is divisive content. So and that's what we're seeing play out and the effect play out throughout the globe. Now, what we think is this happens because the incentives of the companies that are building these technologies and the incentives of the users do not align. The companies want more engagement, but I don't want to always be outraged or always be seeing something that will get me angry. But when it comes to a conflict between the two, the other usually wins. Now, what Nandan already mentioned and what we're trying to do is that we're trying to create digital public goods. So where crypto says that, oh, the big companies are bad, I think they miss an important point, right? They say, oh, big companies, centralized companies are bad. Let's decentralize, right? Let's let that power be somewhere else. What it misses is that the incentives for a product or for anything to actually be used and to be popular, right, do not change because the person building it instead of a centralized entity is like a decentralized entity. If you have to build a decentralized social media, right, you do that, okay, there's no Facebook, but the content on it might still be provocative or engaging because the users want that attention anyway. The basic currency is still that. What we're trying to do, which is different, what I do in my day job at iSPIRT is what Nandan and I, how, all of us are working towards creating infrastructure. Like Nandan said, it's basically the roads and the highways of the digital world that are built to protect certain user values, right? So we take UPI, for example, like Nandan was saying, interoperability is the biggest thing to protect because, and we've already seen it now. The earlier model before UPI was to create closed wallets, closed user wallets, like say Paytm, MobiKwik, all these people had PPL as they were called. And their entire business model depended on being the last man standing in a world of multiple closed groups. One closed group will become the biggest network and they will survive. Whereas what we are saying is, no, let there be a network thing, and now whoever provides the best app experience, whoever provides the other allied services might get you a loan based on your data. So innovation and progress that way is what determines
Awesome.
what users choose. So that is the fundamental philosophy, not just now in us. I want to link this to history, that instead of saying that what we are doing is very innovative, I want to say that what we are doing is going back to how it was built. 40 years ago, when email came out, you could send an email from anyone to anyone. It didn't matter, Gmail, Hotmail, this mail, that mail, because it was interoperable. Today, with all the new technology, with all the advancements, you still can't send somebody who's on WhatsApp can't send their message to somebody who's on Signal, right? Somebody who's on Telegram can't send it to whatever. So it's strange that even though technology is advanced, the user choices have become more restricted. I think what we're saying is this doesn't work. This shouldn't be the case.
Very well said, Tanuj. You're saying we're inventing nothing new. We're just going back to what we promised. Rather the original sin, I think we're going back to the original promise of collective, collaborating, being open, and I think this just wasn't delivered. But you're saying here we are, and Nandan is saying the same. We must aim to deliver. Lovely. Shifting gears a bit, we have solved the world problem, by the way, on this 10 minutes, 20 minutes of discussion. We have figured out what we need to do, and which is brilliant. And when I'm looking at the optimism of you two gentlemen, it almost looks like the promise is being etched and architected to deliver anyway. So, in the next few years, we're not going to have the problems that we have today. But switching gears, like I said, Nandan, getting a little bit more personal peek. It's not every day we get to talk to a celebrity like yourself. So here is Mr. Nandan Nilekani. Everybody in India knows you, the alumni of Indian Institute of Technology. There's technology there. Infosys co-founder, there's technology there. There are so many tech ventures you fund. Nandan, technology is something you have mastered so beautifully and made it work for you. So give us an idea into how have you scaled it? How have you made it work for you? What has been your personal experience?
Sure, Supria, and I'm a very, very a big believer in technology for change and transformation in business and in society. But my personal style is actually very, very simple. In the book we talk about three modes of usage of devices. One is the create mode, where you have to sit down and think and write and do deep thinking. The second is the curate mode, where you're able to traverse, see things, browse, read, and so on. And the third is the communicate mode, where you communicate with other people. And my philosophy is simple. I have three different devices for these three modes. All my work is done only on my laptop. And therefore, when I'm sitting down in my laptop in my office with my lighting and all that, I feel that I'm ready to work. And at that time, I keep all my other devices away and focus on the work that I'm doing on my laptop. And that's the create mode for me. And on my iPad, I do all my reading, browsing, looking at my subscriptions, and so on. And I don't do anything else on the iPad, or watching a movie or something. And then on the phone, I only do my phone calls and messages. I don't use any social media. I just use Twitter, and I don't use Twitter to communicate, to have a conversation, because they always deteriorate. I use it to send an article that I've written or something that I noticed. So this clear division of labor between curate mode on a laptop, curate mode on an iPad, and communicate mode on a phone is a very important thing. And in my email, I try to practice a zero email strategy. I try to close all my emails every day. I have a very good filing system. I've got folders for the last 20 years. And everything I've taken up new, I will create a folder and always make sure that I store it there. So that also helps me in instant retrieval after many years. So a very simple set of techniques. Tanuj has, of course, a more sophisticated approach because he's younger and is more device savvy. But conceptually, he also does something similar. So the key thing is that I make sure that I'm not overwhelmed by my technology. I make sure that I'm not sitting and getting constant notifications and this and that and feeling like, I'm drowning. I'm really on top of it, and I'm limiting my communication to only the phone calls and messages and email so that I can take control of this and be on top of it and be calm at all times.
Outstanding. That is wonderful, Nandan. I think we've got each and every word, and we've confused our lives. So for all of us watching today, well, here is a beautiful tip. Well, they say success is only probably one way, be smart and follow and keep it simple, but failure has many ways. So this is a success recipe by Nandan. Nandan, thank you so much. It was just music listening to it. Tanuj, there is a question that I've been dying to ask. I could have started with that, but I would like to, kind of ending towards the session. Where and how did you land on this wonderful partnership you have with Nandan? And people are saying, here is Tanuj's first book, and it's your LinkedIn says, co-authored with none other than Mr. Nandan Nilekani. Talk to us about how did that come about?
Thank you, Supria. It's so Nandan and I started working at iSPIRT now 6 years ago. Yeah, I mean 5.5, 6 years ago. I ended up getting very lucky. I had just had to shut down a startup, and then I was looking for something to do. So in the meanwhile, I volunteered at iSPIRT. And as part of that volunteering, I think I just got very lucky in the timing, and I was there about 2 weeks, 3 weeks before demonetization. So here is this, outsized event that happens, and I am with the group of people who have made UPI, right? Like have helped create and are helping it grow. So I think I just got very lucky to be in that right time, right place. And that's how Nandan and I met. We started working together on various issues. And then, fast forward many years later, 4 years later, in the pandemic. This is Nandan usually tells the story, so I'm just going to repeat what he says, is that Nandan got a little frustrated with having to do Zoom calls, right, in the pandemic. And once he had figured out that it's safe to meet people in the open air with masks on, etc., he would invite a few people over for taking these walks in the park with him and, work. I think on one such walk in the park, Nandan and I were talking, and after we had finished what we had to do, some time left over, but you still have to exercise, right? You still have to finish the walk. And I think in that time, we brought up the idea, and I said that, this is really great that we're doing this walk in the park rather than doing it on Zoom, and I'm very glad to be out here. He also mentioned that, yes, he was also very frustrated. And so we started talking about those. And like Nandan said, we discovered that even though he has a physical system and I might have a more complicated software system, the ideas behind the systems were the same. Awesome. The idea was choose calm, right? So we started saying, this is great. I also felt like many do that if Nandan is frustrated, then, maybe all of us are, and we should publish a book about this. So that's how it happened.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Tanuj, for that. Quickly coming to the, one or two very quick rapid fire questions, Nandan. I'll start with you. And while, so just give us a quick view to say, there is Nandan of the Infosys fame. There is Nandan of the entire ID, Aadhaar, our digitized identity. There's Nandan, the author now, and I don't know what next. If Nandan Nilekani had to choose one, only one, Nandan, it's the first choice, which one would you choose and why?
Well, I would say the human being. I think finally it's about being a person, being empathetic with your friends and family and relationships. The pandemic has shown us the value of human contact to me. So the human being is the most important.
Wow, how could I not think of that? Wonderful. Tanuj, the book talks about the lovely difference in age, and obviously with age comes the experience. But talk to us one thing which is similar.
Ooh, I think there's a lot is similar. Honestly, I think both of us, most of all, okay. This is the thing that I love about Nandan, and I'm just going to say it. He's essentially my father's age, but yes, childlike curiosity, right? Like it doesn't matter. We're talking about crypto. We're talking about whatever it is. It is genuinely wonderful to see how interested he gets and in the details and wants to know. And I would like to think that's the defining trait for myself, right? Like I'm curious. I have done a weird set of things because I'm curious.
Awesome. So you would each on your side, Nandan, to be curious, wonderful. One, quick final closing comments, Nandan, from you. You shared some excellent insights, but is there anything as a final comment to say how do one, cut the clutter and stay sane and be calm in this world?
I think simplification of your life is very important. I think today we often are faced with the tyranny of choice. In everything, there are so many choices that we get into this tizzy about what to choose. And therefore, if we take different aspects of our life and simplify it, that simply makes it much calmer and we can devote more time to things that we like and want to do for ourselves.
Lovely. Tanuj, final comments from you?
I think a lot of people ask me especially about social media, and social media is associated with the fear of missing out. I would say there is only one cure to the fear of missing out. Miss out for a bit and see how it goes. I promise you the world will not end. And that will probably help you start that journey of fixing your relationship with your technology.
Outstanding. From the not so toxic relationship that we seem to have created today, this session is all about taking charge of that, getting your agency back. And as much as there are those creators at creation trying to take it away from you because it makes sense to them and their world of business, and they seem to be thinking they're doing it right, but God bless them. This is all about getting more power to you. Nandan has shared a beautiful system, and therefore that system has worked for him. And if it has worked for him, there is absolutely no reason why we must not try and make it work for us. Thank you so much, Nandan, Tanuj, for coming up with this beautiful book of Art of Bitfulness, and for this fabulous fireside, session. I think it had a lot of fire in it, a lot of ideas. But my concluding takeaway from this session is keep it simple. And that's what you owe to yourself, and be human. Nandan, thank you again once for that beautiful and powerful message. Thank you.
Thank you, Supria, and thank you for a wonderful session.
It was a great session, Supria. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandan. Thank you, Tanuj. Thank you, Shreya. Over to you.
My God, simplicity and humanity right at the center of so many of those conversations that we've heard today. Thanks, Nandan, Tanuj, and Supria for a notable session. Once again, we need to continue to look at what your environment is doing to us and figure out our role in it to help break the clutter in the digital era. It's important to create digital infrastructure which provides interoperability and portability so that we continue to create digital public goods, roads, and highways of those digital worlds built to protect user values.